who will bring you through the MOI lesson. So the MOI lesson basically, as he'll explain later, is to help you and give you a very structured way, a structured manner for you to understand and know how to teach practical-based skills. So things like your foot drill, first aid, home nursing, transportation of casualty, even PT exercises and things like that. Okay, so yeah, pay attention. Yeah.
All right, now I'll begin. So I'm Ki Cheng Rong from Northwest District, and today I'm going to go through a BNCO model, methods of instruction, aka MOI for short. All right, by the end of this module, you should be able to understand the importance of an effective presentation, the differentiate between MOI and content-based presentation, as well as to understand what to take note of before, during, and after an MOI. Furthermore, you'll be able to learn what or how to hold an MOI-based presentation yourself. So, what is MOI? MOI is the MOI is a presentation that is able to bring ideas and information across to the intended target audience. Sorry, the waiting room a bit screwing me up. This is done usually through a demonstration, lecture, or speech, with the aim to inform or persuade. Right, we move on. So what's the difference between MOI and content-based presentation? So as Darrell just mentioned, MOI-based presentation offers a practical explanation of a topic for better visualization as well as understanding. Therefore, it is important to use MOI-based presentation to teach skills such as transportation casualty, foot drill maneuvers, wound dressing, as well as bandaging. A content-based presentation, however, focus more on the delivery of ideas and information of a particular topic. So the more theoretical concepts such as first aid and home nursing will be taught in content-based presentation. For content-based presentation, however, we'll be going through more of that on BNCOC. So the most important part of this slide is how these two presentations work together. So in MOI-based presentation, you offer a practical explanation, so you teach a practical skill, whereas in content-based presentation, we teach why do we carry out such a practical skill, the more theoretical concept on why you do it this way and not the other way. Now, we move on to the structure of an MOI-based presentation. There are three phases: before, during, and after. In each phases, there are several components to take note of as well. So let's delve into them. The before phase. Right, let me ask you guys a question. What do you guys think you need to prepare yourself before an MOI content-based presentation? Sorry, before a MOI presentation takes place. Let me type it out in the chat room so that you guys can see it. So I'll give you guys approximately 1 minute to answer this question, and then I will go in depth and to answer your questions as well as to give you guys the information. Is everyone clear with the question, or is it ever not clear? Okay, your 1 minute is up. We do not have any answers thus far, so maybe I'll just point to you guys directly. Can I get, let's see. Crunchy Secondary School, Tracy, you have a nice profile picture. Boku no Hero. May I get you to answer this question? Do you mind unmuting yourself? Tracy from Kranji Secondary School, are you there? There was a, can hear me? Okay. Oh, that's fine. Okay. No worries. Let me find someone else. Actually, you can type your answer as well. Okay, in the meanwhile, maybe ask Yang Zirui from HCI to answer the question. You can unmute yourself. Question is, what do you need to prepare before an MOI-based presentation takes place? Let me pose the question again. Okay, never mind, no worries. I'll ask more questions later, so please take note of what I'm going to say. So never mind, it's okay. I'll skip the question phase for now. Now I'll talk about what goes on in the before phase. So we have the audience analysis, research, logistics and venue preparation, lesson plan, as well as rehearsal. So these are the 5 components that makes up the before phase, and these are stuff that you need to prepare yourself for. So now I'll delve more into detail, beginning with audience analysis. So by the right of this screen, you should notice a pinkish bubble of guiding questions. These are questions you can ask yourself in the future when you're holding an MY-based presentation. So now I'll talk about the audience analysis. It is important to know your target audience so that you can tailor your lesson for your target audience. What do I mean by that? Let me get more into details shortly. So the size of the target audience is important because you want to know how many materials you need to prepare yourself for the intended size of the target audience. So perhaps you got a class of 5, class of 10, ensure that enough materials are prepared for them, and always ensure that your demonstration is tailored to the number of participants. So for example, if you have a small class, you can feel free to delve into more details simply because you are able to engage each and every one of them. You have both the time and capacity to do so, whereas in a class of 10 and above, you do not have the time and capacity to engage each and every one of your audience. Therefore, you do not have to be very detailed in your explanation when going through your MOI-based presentation. Everything okay so far? Give me a nod if you're understanding it. Yes, yes, no? Yes, okay, I see some nods. Thank you, thank you. Now, the next thing we'll talk about is target audience learning capacity. So let me give you guys an exaggerated example, a working adult versus a student. A working adult has the age and maturity, and therefore he has more experience as compared to a student. So a working adult should have the prior knowledge, and therefore you do not have to go in depth. Sorry, it would be better to give more advanced details to the adults simply because they have the prior knowledge and are able to understand you better. A student, however, will not be able to understand you well, and therefore you have to give them the basic level of understanding and at least ensure that they are able to capable of understanding you. Right, now that we talk about target audience learning capacity and the size of the target audience, we have covered audience analysis. So now we'll move on to research. So why do you carry out research? Research is important to clarify any doubts or questions that you may have. This ensures that only correct information is being passed down. So how do you do research? Research can be done through online or through your reliable senior or teacher. So I encourage you guys to do it in a, well, 2-point kind of research way. So first through online and the second through a human being. Well, your teachers, your reliable senior. All good? Okay. Logistics and venue preparation. So similar to the audience analysis, where you find out the size of your target audience, you must now prepare all the logistics for the size of the target audience. Therefore, you must ensure that all the logistics are in working condition. Another thing to take note of is the venue preparation, indoor versus outdoor. Well, it depends on the situation, if it is raining or not. The restriction on noise level, perhaps the activity that you're going to do will disrupt others. It will not be wise to disrupt others when there is an ongoing examination, as well as other people disrupting you. So perhaps there's an ongoing parade beside you. It will not be a good idea to hold a MOI-based presentation next to the ongoing parade, simply because the students or the target audience will not be able to hear you. Always ensure that the target audience can see and hear you. Now, here are some formations that you can use. The key point to take note of is the audience can see what you're doing and hear what you are saying. So take a look at some of these formations. The ones in orange are the chairs. The ones in blue are the participants themselves. Tell me when you're done. Shake your head when you're done. All good? Okay. So now we move on to the important topic of a before phase. This is what you'll be graded on, and there'll be an activity about this later. So do pay attention to this. A lesson plan. So what's the purpose of a lesson plan? A lesson plan is useful because it guides the presenter in ensuring key considerations are all met. It also ensures that sufficient time is allocated to each activity, and it will help serve as a reference for the presenter during the lesson itself. So here's an example of a lesson plan sample. So what makes up a lesson plan samples includes the venue, target audience, duration, objectives, as well as a lesson schedule. So these are things that must be written down in a lesson plan sample. Lesson schedule, there are 3 components to it: time, activity, as well as remarks. Let me now go through about the first one, which is activity. So I'll go to the second activity, introduction to elevation sling. By the left of the introduction to elevation sling, you should notice there's a time, so 5 minutes for the activity. And by the right side of introduction to elevation sling, there's a remark section, which showcases the details that are going to be, well, done during the activity. So state objectives of the lesson, introduce the purpose of tying elevation sling, and stuff like that. Let me give you guys one more example. The third activity, demonstration of elevation sling. So by the remarks, you can see that there's details such as how long you take for the full demonstration, how long you take for demonstration steps, and how long you take demonstration in steps with explanation. So some of these activity, you may be a bit puzzled what they are, but I can assure you they are part of MOI, and they will be gone through during phase later. So other things to take note of inside the lesson plan sample are contingency plan as well as logistics. So the contingency plan, well, it's basically if wet weather and you cannot do the activity, what should you do then? Logistics is important for the lecturer to prepare all the equipment and logistics before the lesson begins. So now, since there's an activity later, I need you guys to take a photo of these 2 slides. I'll give you guys some time. Take out your phone to take a photo of these 2 slides. I'll give you guys 20 seconds. Okay, assume all of you guys have taken a photo. Please nod your head once you're done. All good? Okay, now move to the second lesson sample. Please take a photo of this slide as well. I'll give you guys 10 seconds to do so. Let me repeat. Please take a photo of this lesson sample. We'll be doing an activity about it later, and therefore you'll be required to fill in a lesson plan by yourself later. Okay, okay. If everyone's ready, please throw a thumbs up. Okay. Okay. Right, let's continue. So the last phase of the before component will be rehearsal. So a rehearsal should be conducted to familiarize yourself with both the lesson plan as well as the content itself. And if there are other people involved in the presentation, you must ensure that they are aware of their individual roles and responsibilities as well. The before phase, let me sum it all up. Audience analysis, the size of the target audience as well as their learning capacity. Research, ensure that only correct information is being passed down. Logistics and venue preparation, ensure that enough logistics are being prepared and the venue is appropriate where the audience can see and hear what you're saying. Lesson plan, to ensure that key objectives are all met, as well as the lesson schedule itself. Rehearsal, ensuring that everyone is clear of what they are doing and familiarize themselves with the content. Right, now we move on to the during phase. Now I'll ask you guys a question again, please respond. So the during phase, what do you guys think are inside the during phase? I've actually went through some of them in the lesson plan earlier, so you can actually answer them quite easily. So maybe I'll get someone to reply. HCI Aldrich Chai, can you unmute yourself? Aldrich Chai, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah. What do you think goes on in the during phase of MOI? What do you think takes place?
The things that were planned in the before phase.
Maybe give a more elaborate explanation to that.
Like basically carrying out what was planned beforehand.
And do you know what the activities are? Just now in the lesson plan, I actually mentioned some of them already.
The tying of a arm sling.
Okay. The demonstration phase, yeah. Anything else?
And yeah.
Okay, that's correct, But there's other activities as well. So let me delve into more details. So now, I'll show you guys the 5 components that makes up the lesson component during MOI. So first, you explain the topic, then you demonstrate. Next, you hold a practice session, ask for questions, and then hold a debrief. These are the 5 main components of the lesson component, and we'll now go in depth into each of them. So explanation. Explanation should be simplified, and can be easily understood. So I'll give you guys 2 examples of an explanation, and you can tell me which one is more simplified and easily understood. So the first sentence is, an arm sling is used when your forearm is fractured or the joints of your forearm is dislocated. This sling helps to immobilize your injured arm and give it a support. The second sentence structure is, an arm sling is used to immobilize and support a fractured/dislocated lower arm. Now this should be quite a straightforward answer. Maybe I can get Zhising from KSS to reply. Still unmuted. Okay. Okay. So many people cannot talk today. Okay. Can you just type out the response? Maybe just the first sentence or the second sentence? The second one, right? Okay. So maybe I'll go more in depth for you because you cannot tell me the reason to your answer. So I can assume that you think it's the second one because it's shorter. but that's not really the reason. Perhaps, I'm not sure what you may be thinking. So the reason why the second one is more simplified is because we do not go in depth into what a fracture is. So the main point of explanation is to focus on why do you use an arm sling. We do not want to draw your attention away from the main point, which is what an arm sling is used for. You do not have to go into details of what a fracture is because it will only draw attention away from the main point. You guys see what I'm saying? Thumbs up if you can understand. All good? Can I? All right, now move on to the next point. Oh, yeah, sorry, the second one is correct. Thank you, Jesse. Right, now we move on to the demonstration phase. So the demonstration phase is split up into 3 procedures. First one, full demonstration of whole procedure. Second one, demonstration of procedure in steps, and demonstration in procedure with steps and explanation. So now I'll give you guys a real life example, okay? So I have a bandage here. I'm going to tie it with knot. So I have the left end as well as the right end. All good? Can, huh? So I'm going to tie it with knot, okay? So the way I do it is like that. Okay, that's the full demonstration of the whole procedure. And now I'll be going to the second one, demonstration of procedure in steps. So first I form an X, then I go under, I pull, then I form another X, I go under, I pull. All right. So now I'll go demonstration of procedure in steps with explanation. So L, left side and right side. So first I form X by going the left over the right. So the left is over the right. I know it's a bit hard to see in the video, but left over right. So your left end goes under to form a shape like that, and then you pull. Then now you go over right over left, go under and pull. So as you can see the difference between step 3 and 2. Step 3 is much more detailed. I explain which one is left, which one is right, and what you do in each step. So that takes place, that is what goes on in the demonstration phase. Now I'll ask you guys a question once again to check your understanding. Can I get, well, I hope that the next person can answer and the microphone is not spoiled. Maybe Natalie Chua from KSS. What do you think are the 3 components that forms a demonstration?
Demonstration.
Yeah, what are the 3 steps?
First one is the full procedure, full demonstration of the whole procedure, that one.
Correct, yeah.
The second one is the demonstration of the steps, right?
Correct.
And then the third one is demonstration of the steps with explanation.
Right. So what's the difference between step 3 and 2? Maybe from the with knot example, what do you notice is the difference?
Step 3 is like you explain like much more detail than like step 2.
Okay. Yep, that's correct. Thank you. Right. Now we move on to the practice phase. So after you demonstrate and the audience get the gist of how to do your demonstration, we break them up into groups. So the reason why we break them into groups is because it is easier for the instructor to supervise and correct any mistakes on the spot. So break the class up into how many groups and groups of how many. That can depend on your activity. So for example, if you're doing wound dressing, you can break them into pairs. Or if you're doing transport casualty, you can break them into groups of 4 or 5. Or you can even do as a whole if you're doing squad drills. Individually, you also can do some drills by yourself. Alright, so also before the practice phase takes place, it is important you point out some common mistakes. So for the with knot example, a common mistake I can tell you guys is if you do a left over right, you cannot do another left over right. You must do a right over left. So it goes in the opposite way, if that makes sense. Making sense, right? You do left over right, then you do right over left. Not left over right, and then left over right. That's a wrong one. That's a common mistake found in with knots. And yeah. So during practice phase, once the cadets or the target audience are practicing, you must go to them and spot all their mistakes. All good, right? Okay. Now, so after the practice phase, we move on to questions. State your rules of when to ask questions, as well as cater for dedicated timings for questions, so that it will not disrupt your lesson. So a preferable timing would be after your demonstration phase, after the practice session, you can cater this specific time to ask questions. And if the target audience do not have any questions for you, this is when you ask them questions yourself. So prepare some questions beforehand so that you can check for their understanding. So immediately, I can ask you guys a question like, why do you split the class up into multiple groups? Maybe I'll ask HCI Song Yang to reply. So the question is, why do you split the class up into multiple groups when practicing?
So that the practice is more efficient and it like encourages more discussion between different groups.
Okay, yeah, that's correct. That's not really what I went through, but it's correct. Okay. So that what I went through is actually, well, is to make it easier to supervise and correct any mistakes that might occur, but what you say is true as well, to generate discussion. I believe that's what you said. That's fine as well. Yep. Can. Now we move on to debrief. So debrief is done after the question phase. So we conclude the lesson by summing up the common faults and re-emphasize on the important points. So after doing the practice session, you will notice quite a lot of common faults. This is when you address it as a whole. So if once everyone gather, you can actually sum up all the common faults and then correct them. We're emphasizing on the important points as well. So similarly, for the with not example, you do not do left over right, you do left over right and right over left, something like that. Seek feedback on the conduct of the lesson to help you improve. So this is important for the lecturers because you yourself may not know what you're doing badly in. The target audience, however, are capable of seeing your mistakes. So this is when you can get feedback from your target audience themselves. So now we talk about the delivery. So now I'm going to ask you guys a bunch of questions. You guys can answer them immediately. So the first question is, second question is, you can check. Oh, okay. Hold on. I realized I've been private chatting. No wonder. Yeah. No wonder no question go through. Okay, sorry. Sorry about that. Second. Okay, you guys can answer the 3 questions. I'll give you guys just 1 minute to answer them. Huh? Based on my presentation, do you guys notice if I'm speaking too loud, or if I'm using too much fillers, or I'm making any inappropriate hand gestures?
You're muted.
Huh? What? Oh, cut ah. Oh, okay. Right. Okay, never mind. It's okay. We'll move on. So the important part of the delivery will be to focus more on when you're teaching the stuff, you do not speak too loud and you do not speak so soft. Ensure that the target audience can hear you. Do not use too much fillers because it's quite annoying to hear all fillers. Imagine a speaker going all the way. You'll be disinterested in what his or her is saying and not making a lot of inappropriate hand gestures because it will distract you. So the turnout bearing, always ensure that you are well presented yourself. So at least you're wearing a half uniform when during a MOI session. And it is important to present yourself well when you're presenting such a MOI, when you're presenting an MOI based presentation. Right now we move on to the after phase. The after phase is when you can check back on the knowledge of your target audience. So how to do so is through quizzes, tests, as well as games. So we can hold an after activity review as well, so they can seek feedback from the participants on your conduct of MOI so that you can improve. Now over here, we focus more on the right side of the screen. How can I encourage the participant to provide honest feedback? So you can do so by probably making the response anonymous, so you do not reveal the names of the participants, or you can do so by, that's practically one of the only way I can think of right now. Or how will I react to that feedback if it's negative? So if the feedback is negative, perhaps it's something you can change and you find it's worth changing, feel free to change it. But if it's something that you cannot change, my advice too is not to change it. Right, now we wrap it all up, the learning summary. So over here, I'll let you guys read this on your own, just 30 seconds. Okay, I'll be moving on to the next slide in 5 seconds. Okay, so over here, we can focus more on the key learning points, the before, during, and after. Before, audience analysis, where we talk about the size and the learning capacity of the audience, research to ensure that only correct information is being passed down. Logistics, ensure that enough logistics are being prepared. Lesson plan, to ensure that key objectives are all met and written down. And rehearsal, where you ensure that you are familiar with content. Lesson components, the 5 lesson components, explanation, demonstration, practice, questions, as well as debrief. And lastly, we talk about delivery, how you should speak, and your turnout and bearing, your attire. Then we move on to after phase, checking back, and after action review to check back on the understanding of your target audience. So now we move on to, I will let you guys do a survey so that you can check your understanding. Just give me a moment.